Metropolitan Life by Fran Lebowitz. Essays. My day, an introduction of sorts. 12:35 p.m. The phone rings. I am not amused. This is not my favorite way to wake up. My favorite way to wake up is to have a certain French movie star whisper to me softly at 2:30 in the afternoon that if I want to get to Sweden in time to pick up my Nobel Prize for Literature, I had better ring for breakfast. This occurs rather less often than one might wish. Today is a perfect example, for my caller is an agent from Los Angeles who informs me that I don't know him. True, and not without reason. He is audibly tan. He is interested in my work. His interest has led him to the conclusion that it would be a good idea for me to write a movie comedy. I would, of course, have total artistic freedom, for evidently comic writers have taken over the movie business. I look around my apartment, a feat readily accomplished by simply glancing up, and remark that Dino De Laurentiis would be surprised to hear that. He chuckles tanly and suggests that we talk. I suggest that we are talking. He, however, means there and at my own expense. I reply that the only way I could get to Los Angeles at my own expense were if I were to go by postcard. He chuckles again and suggests that we talk. I agree to talk just as soon as I have won the Nobel Prize for outstanding achievement in physics. 12:55 p.m. I try to get back to sleep, although sleeping is an area in which I have manifested an almost Algeresque grit and persistence. I fail to attain my goal. 1:20 p.m. I go downstairs to get the mail. I get back into bed. 9 press releases, 4 screening notices, 2 bills, an invitation to a party in honor of a celebrated heroin addict, a final disconnect notice from New York Telephone, and 3 hate letters from Mademoiselle readers demanding to know just what it is about me that makes me think I have the right to regard houseplants, green, living things, with such marked distaste. I call the phone company and try to make a deal, as actual payment is not a possibility. Would they like to go to a screening? Would they care to attend a party for a heroin addict? Are they interested in knowing just what it is that makes me think that I have the right to regard houseplants with such marked distaste? It seems they would not. They would like $148.10. I agree that this is indeed an understandable preference, but caution them again the bloodless quality of life devoted to the blind pursuit of money. We are unable to reach a settlement. I pull up the covers and the phone rings. I spend the next few hours fending off editors, chatting amiably, and plotting revenge. I read, I smoke. The clock unfortunately catches my eye. 3:40 p.m. I consider getting out of bed. I reject the notion as being utterly vigorous. I read and smoke a bit more. 4:15. I get up feeling curiously unrefreshed. I open the refrigerator. I decide against the half a lemon and jar of gluten's mustard, and on the spur of the moment chose instead to have breakfast out. I guess that's just the kind of girl I am. Whimsical. 5:10 p.m. I return to my apartment, laden with magazines, and spend the remainder of the afternoon reading articles by writers who regrettably met their deadlines. 6:55 p.m. A romantic interlude. The object of my affection arrives bearing a houseplant. 9:30 p.m. I go to dinner with a group of people that include 2 fashion models, a fashion photographer, a fashion photographer's representative, and an art director. I'm occupied most in, I am occupied most entirely with the art director, drawn to him largely because he knows the most words. 2:05 a.m. I enter my apartment and prepare to work. In deference to the slight chill, I don 2 sweaters and an extra pair of socks. I pour myself a club soda and move the lamp next to the desk. I reread several old articles of issues of Rhoda Barrett's Hollywood and a fair piece of the letters of Oscar Wilde. I pick up my pen and stare at the paper. I light a cigarette. I stare at the paper. I write, "My day, an introduction of sorts." Good. Lean, yet cadenced. I consider my day. I become unaccountably depressed. I doodle in the margin. I jot down an idea I have for an all-black version of Shakespearean company to be called As You Likes It. I look longingly at my sofa, not unmindful of the fact that it converts cleverly into a bed. I light a cigarette. I stare at the paper. 4:50. The sofa wins. Another victory for furniture. Children, pro or con? Moving as I do in what would kindly be called artistic circles, children are in frequent occurrence. But even the most artistic of circles includes within its periphery a limited edition of the tenaciously domestic. As I am generally quite fond of children, I accept this condition with far less displeasure than do more rarefied acquaintances. That is not to imply that I am a total fool for a little grin, but simply that I consider myself to be in a position of unquestionable objectivity, and therefore eminently qualified to deal with the subject in an authoritative manner. From the number of children in evidence, it appears that people have them at the drop of a hat. For surely, were they to give the matter its due attention, they would act with greater decorum. Of course, until now, prospective parents have not had the opportunity to see the facts spelled out in black and white, and therefore cannot reasonably be held accountable for their actions. To this end, I have carefully set down all pertinent information in the fervent hope that it will result in a future populated by a more attractive array of children than I have thus far encountered. Pros. I must take issue with the term mere child, for it has been my invariable experience that the company of a mere child is infinitely preferable to that of a mere adult. Children are usually small in stature, which makes them quite useful for getting at those hard-to-reach places. Children do not sit next to one in restaurants and discuss their preposterous hopes for the future in loud tones of voice. Children ask better questions than adults do. May I have a cookie? Why is the sky blue? And what does a cow say? Are far more likely to elicit a cheerful response than, where's your manuscript? Why haven't you called? And who's your lawyer? Children give life to the concept of immaturity. Children make the most desirable opponents in Scrabble, as they are both easy to beat and fun to cheat. It is quite possible to stand in a throng of children without once detecting even the faintest whiff of an exciting, rugged aftershave or cologne. Children sleep either alone or with small toy animals. The wisdom of such behavior is unquestionable, as it frees them from the immeasurable tedium of being privy to the whispered confessions of others. I have yet to run across a teddy bear who is harboring the secret desire to wear a maid's uniform. Cons. Even when freshly washed and relieved of all obvious confections, children tend to be sticky. One can only assume that this has something to do with not smoking enough. Children have decidedly little fashion sense, and if left to their own devices, would more often than not be drawn to garments of unfortunate cut. In this respect, they do not differ greatly from the majority of their elders, but somehow one blames them more. Children respond inadequately to sardonic humor and veiled threats. Children are rarely in a position to lend one a truly interesting sum of money. There are, however, exceptions, and such children are an excellent addition to any party. Children arise at an unseemly hour and are oftentimes in the habit of putting food on an empty stomach. Children do not look well in evening clothes. All too often, children are accompanied by adults. Food for thought and vice versa. Summer has an unfortunate effect upon hostesses who have been unduly influenced by the photography of Irving Penn and take the season as a cue to serve dinners of astonishingly meager proportions. These they call light, a quality which, while most assuredly welcome in comedies, cotton shirts, and hearts, is not an appropriate touch for dinner. It is not surprising that a number of such hostesses seem to be associated with the world of high fashion, for it follows that a person whose idea of a hard day's work is posing for Deborah Tuberville might also be of the opinion that parsley is an adequate meat course. Thin, almost transparent slices of lemon do indeed go a long way in dressing up a meal, but they should not be counted as a separate vegetable. Cold soup is a very tricky thing, and it is a rare hostess who can carry it off. More often than not, the dinner guest is left with the impression that had he only come a little earlier, he could have gotten it while it was still hot. Salad is not a meal. It is a style. Vegetables are interesting but lack a sense of purpose when unaccompanied by a good cut of meat. Water chestnuts are supposed to go in a thing, not be the thing itself. White grapes are very attractive, but when it comes to dessert, people generally like cake with icing. Candied violets are the Necco wafers of the overbred. Saffron should be used sparingly, if at all. No matter how enamored one might be of this seasoning, there are few who would agree that it is equal to salt in the versatility department. Watercress is pleasant enough in a salad or sandwich, but when placed alongside a hamburger, it is merely an annoyance. While it is undeniably true that people love a surprise, it is equally true that they are seldom pleased to suddenly and without warning happen upon a series of prunes in what they took to be a normal loin of pork. A loaf of bread that is more comfortable than a sofa cannot help but be unpalatable. The servant problem being what it is, one would think it apparent that a society that provides a helper for tuna, but compels a writer to pack her own suitcases, desperately needs to reorder its priorities. Chocolate is an excellent flavor for ice cream, but both unreasonable and disconcerting in chewing gum. Breakfast cereals that come in the same colors as polyester leisure suits make oversleeping a virtue. Cheese that is required by law to append the word food to its title does not go well with red wine or fruit. Civilized adults do not take apple juice with dinner. Bread that must be sliced with an axe is bread that is too nourishing. Large, naked, raw carrots are acceptable as food only to those who live in hutches eagerly awaiting Easter. Food is welcome at both meal and snack time. It goes well with most any beverage and by and large makes the best sandwich. Food gives real meaning to dining room furniture. Food offers the perfect excuse to use the good dishes. Food is an important part of a balanced diet. Without food, one of man's most perplexing yet engaging problems would be rendered meaningless when one realizes that the chicken and the egg both didn't come first. If food did not exist, it would be well nigh impossible to get certain types off the phone, as one would be unable to say, "Look, I've got to run, but let's have dinner sometime soon." Food is a very big factor in Christianity. What would the miracle of the loaves and fishes have been without it? And the Last Supper, how effective would that have been? If there was no such thing as food, Oyster Bay would be called just Bay. And for the title of the cherry orchard, Chekhov would have chosen a group of empty trees regularly spaced. First off, I want to say that as far as I'm concerned, in instances where I have not personally and deliberately sought it out, the only difference between music and muzak is the spelling. Pablo Casals, practicing across the hall with the door open, being trapped in an elevator, the ceiling of which is booming parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme, it's all the same to me. Harsh words? Perhaps. But then again, these are not gentle times we live in. They are not being made no more gentle by this incessant melody that was once real life. There was a time when music knew its place. No longer. Perhaps this is not music's fault. It may be that music fell in with a bad crowd and lost its sense of common decency. I am willing to consider this. I am willing even to try and help. I would like to do my bit to set music straight in order that it might shape up and leave the mainstream of society. The first thing that music must understand is that there are two kinds of music, good music and bad music. Good music is music that I want to hear. Bad music is music that I don't want to hear. So that music might be more clearly see the error of its ways, I offer the following. If you are music and you recognize yourself on this list, you are bad music. Music residing in the hold buttons of other people's business telephones. I do not, under any circumstances, enjoy hold buttons, but I am a woman of reason. I can accept reality. I can face the facts. What I cannot face is the music. Just as there are two kinds of music, good and bad, there are also two kinds of hold buttons, good and bad. Good hold buttons are hold buttons that hold one silently. Bad hold buttons are hold buttons that hold one musically. When I hold, I want to hold silently. That is the way it was meant to be. For that is what God was talking about when he said, "Forever hold your peace." He would have added, "and quiet," but he thought you were smarter. Music in public places such as restaurants, supermarkets, hotel lobbies, airports, etc. When I am in any of the above-mentioned places, I am not there to hear music. I am there for whatever reason is appropriate to the respective place. I am no more interested in hearing Mac the Knife while waiting for the shuttle to Boston than someone sitting ringside at the Sands Hotel is interested in being forced to choose between 16 varieties of cottage cheese. If God had meant for everything to happen at once, he would not have invented desk calendars. Epilogue. Some people talk to themselves. Some people sing to themselves. Is one group better than the other? Did not God create all people equal? Yes, God created all people equal. Only to some, he gave the ability to make up their own words.